What is going on, guys? Yeah, and welcome to my $650 Ultimate Gaming PC build for March 2015. Today we're going to be building a 1080p gaming build, just under $650. It comes to about $630 in the end, so we have a little bit of money left over. So we're just going to get right into this. Before we get started, I just want to say this is my first one of these, so it might not be very good, but let's go. So with the processor, I've gone with the AMD FX 6350 3.9 GHz 6-core processor. This is, in my opinion, the best processor for this kind of price range. The thing about this processor is, some people, might prefer Intel, especially for gaming, but the thing about this processor is, this is like way cheaper than any kind of high standard Intel processor you could get for gaming. And I think the CPUs on the same level as this in the Intel side of the court, if you will, are kind of like, they're just not as powerful as you'd want in a PC like this, especially with this price range. You want to be trying to get as many as high an FPS as possible in games, and I just think that this is probably the best option. But the thing about this CPU is it's good enough for gaming, like I just said, but it's also a really powerful CPU for things like video editing and video rendering. You'll be able to do that easily with those 6 cores, render things really quickly, and you'll be able to live stream off it easily because of the larger amount of cores, as opposed to you'd probably be going for a quad core if you bought an Intel for this price. So yeah, this I think is a pretty good all-round processor for a budget build. Good for gaming, good for streaming, good for editing, like basically just a good all-round processor. Okay, so for the motherboard, I went with the GIGABYTE GA78 LMT USB 3. You can pick this up right now for about just under $60 from Newegg. This is a very budget processor. The thing about this processor is it will do basically everything you need it to for this build. No more than that, really. It is for this build, and that's all there is to it. But in my opinion, the thing about motherboards is they are there to do a job, and this one does it well enough for a budget. I think if you're on a budget, you should just get something that can do what you need it to do. You shouldn't worry about getting like a really nice one. And in my opinion, this is probably the best one for the price at the moment. It has 4 RAM slots, so we're going to be using 2 RAM sticks, but you can expand that in the future. It's SATA 2, so it doesn't support SSDs, so if you want a solid state drive, you're going to have to splash out on a slightly better motherboard, but that's up to you. But other than that, it's going to do everything you want. It's going to support any sort of card you want at the moment. So it's in my opinion, that's like pretty much fine, but there is another $20 left in the budget, so if you want to kind of find a better one or something, then feel free to do so. But in my opinion, that'll do the job for the moment. Okay, so for the RAM, I went for the G.SKILL Ripjaws X series. I've gone for the 2 4GB sticks to make 8GB. You can get this for about $55 at the moment, which is a really good price. This thing's running out 1600 MHz. The thing about RAM is that nowadays, not only is RAM really expensive, but you're starting to need more and more of it. Like, about a year ago, 4GB was probably acceptable on a budget, but at the moment, you really want to be going for 8GB, because a lot of games are starting to have, like, recommended system specs of, like, using the full 8GB. Things like The Witcher 3 and Battlefield Hardline are recommending 8GB, so if you want to be able to run games in, like, 1080p at, like, a 60 FPS on medium to high settings, then you're going to really want to be using 8GB, because it's going to be using a lot of memory. So 4GB isn't really acceptable, but for this price, I think this RAM cover you really well. You'll be able to play as many games as you want. Really, well, obviously not like all at the same time, but I mean, you'll be able to play whatever games you want. You'll be able to get multiple tasks done if you're into that kind of thing. So yeah, this is good for the price at the moment. Definitely just picking it up, and we'll do the job. It'll do everything you need to do. Okay, so for the hard drive, I've gone for the Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB 7200 RPM hard drive. You can make this up for about $55 at the moment. This hard drive, I was going to go for a 500GB because a lot of people have been talking about how they've been saving like money on the hard drive and getting 500GB as opposed to 1TB or getting solid states. But the thing about gaming at the moment is games are starting to get really big. If you look at things like Battlefield Hardline's out in a couple of days, it might be out by the time this video gets up. That says it's going to take up to 60GB of hard drive space, which is a lot for one game, especially if you're going to be getting, like, if you're the kind of person that's into like DLCs and that premium, like the little premium pack thing that they do, get all the DLC in that, you're going to want a lot of space. The Witcher 3 I think is about the same, about 60GB, maybe even more. I don't fully remember, but don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's a lot. And just games in general nowadays average about 30 to 40GB from what I've seen, things like Advanced Warfare and Shadow of Mordor, things like that. So you're going to be eating up a lot of space fast, especially if you've got you know, a lot of games on there at once. If you're the kind of person that installs a game or two and then like plays through it and uninstalls it, then maybe you drop down to a 500 gig and you should be alright. And then you can spend some more money elsewhere. That's really up to you. But in my opinion, it's just a lot safer to get the 1 terabyte and be able to store all the games happily. And that also leaves you a little bit of room that you can, you know, make videos if you're into that kind of thing. Okay, so with the graphics card, I went for the relatively new Zotac GeForce GTX 960 2GB video card. You can get this for around $200 at the moment, and in my opinion, this card's actually really good. Now, a lot of people were a little bit disappointed when it came out. They said it wasn't what they hoped for it to be, but I think the only problem, like the only reason why that was a thing, is because they expected more of it. Like loads of people expected it to be like a really good middle-end graphics card, because thing about Nvidia is they don't really have any mid-end graphics cards. They have budget graphics cards, like anything up to like the 750 Ti, but then it kind of jumps to like, I'd say the 760 is also a budget, but then it jumps to like 770 and like 970, and they're both like pretty expensive, pretty high-end graphics cards. So there's no kind of mid-ground, so people were expecting this to be like a really good middle-end graphics card, and they were a little bit disappointed when it was not brilliant. But I think for a $650 budget, this card will actually do you really well. Combined with the 6350 processor, if you'll be able to run most modern, like current games in 1080p at around 60 FPS on medium to high settings. Some games that have like stupidly high system requirements, like The Witcher 3, maybe you might, if you want to get like a consistent 60 at 1080p, you might need to drop the settings down to about medium. But I think on a budget like this, you can kind of expect that from any graphics card. So I think for this kind of price, this graphics card will suit the build pretty perfectly. Okay, so for the power supply, we've gone for the Cooler Master VSM 650 semi-modular power supply. This is an 80+ certified power supply. Cooler Master, they're known for some pretty good power supplies and fans and all things like that. So I think this is probably a good choice for the build. You can get this for a little bit over $100, but this is probably like perfect essentially. It's a really quiet processor. It's semi-modular, so if you prefer modular power supplies, I don't think there's any point, honestly, but some people like really like cable management and things like that. But in my opinion, this is going to have like, well, it has everything you need. There's not going to be any extra cables like knocking about or anything, so you don't really need a modular one. 650 watts, from what I can tell, this build comes in at about 550, so really you don't need this much power, but I think this is good because it leaves you some room to like upgrade in the future if you want, like, say maybe a better processor, because at the moment 6350 it's pretty power efficient, and so is the graphics card actually, so neither of them use a great deal of power. But this gives you some room if you plan on upgrading the processor in the future to a more power hungry one, then you have some room to do that with the power supply. Okay, so finally, for the case, I went for the Cooler Master Elite 431 Plus. This case is a mid-sized tower. There's going to be plenty of room in this case to build what you need to, you know, fit all the graphics card in. The graphics card isn't actually that big, and then the motherboard is a mid-ATX as well, so it's going to give you like all the room you need essentially, and a bit of room for expansion. The PSU will be placed in the bottom. Some people like to know about that kind of thing before they buy it. But yes, it was a pretty solidly built case. It's got it lights up blue on the front if you're into that kind of thing, lights and that. Why not? It's pretty well cooled. It's got an internal SATA X dock, so you can have a DVD drive. I didn't include one in the build, but you can do that if you want. It's also got a side window. A lot of people aren't really bothered about this, but it's always nice to just be able to like look in on your handiwork and appreciate it. So yeah, if you want to, you can. Well, yeah, it does actually have that, you know, a side window. So yeah, but that's about it for this. That's $60 by the way, so that's super cheap. But yeah, so if you like this video, leave a like. I hope this helped out. This is March's $650 build. If you like this video, love it, show me a favourite. My name's Yeti, follow me on Twitter for tweets, Twitch for streams. Like I said, this is the first one I've ever done, so it's probably awful, but whatever. I'll see you guys in the next video, so peace off.